Hello class, welcome to my presentation for marriages in the family on parenthood and children. Let's begin. What factors need to be considered when deciding whether to parent or not? In my research, I found 4 different factors that should be considered as to whether or not a person should parent. Cost, time, happiness, and when to have children, earlier versus later. I think since money is on most of our minds, cost is a really big reason why people would not become parents. I have some quotes later that talk about just the expense of having kids and the difference that it makes. And time also is another big one, which is why I put that second. And that is not only financially, but the time it takes to care for the child and how it takes away from your leisurely activities and your career as well. Cost. Children decrease a parent's level of living considerably, and the financial costs of children can even offset the rewards of parenthood. Every year, the United States Department of Agriculture estimates how much it costs the average American family to have a child. In 2013, for a middle-income family, the average cost of raising a child to age 18 was $245,000, not including college. Time. The financial costs of raising children are more important to men's life satisfaction because she is the primary caretaker of children. A woman's life satisfaction is more affected by the reduction in time to do other things. My mom is a perfect example of this because she got her teaching degree at USC, and she was teaching for years. And she decided to drop that career path to raise me and also my brother. Probably because we were a lot of work, but she chose to do that for me, and she was sacrificing her time. On the other hand, my dad was the breadwinner, and he didn't necessarily have to give up his career. But when it came to raising me, and my mom was off doing whatever she was doing, he would, be able to have time to spend with me. And it wasn't necessarily him working all the time. He did work full time, so, that does seem like all the time. But he did make the effort to come to my games, to come to my school and talk to my teachers and meetings and stuff like that to help me get through high school and junior high and elementary school, everything before. So they really helped me get to the place I'm at now. So that's really why time is so valuable, and why it's such a luxury that many parents don't have. Happiness. Research studies show that having children increases marital satisfaction, whilst having too many decreases satisfaction in marriage. Children have the paradoxical effect of increasing the stability of the marriage while decreasing its quality. When to have children, earlier versus later. Choosing early parenthood means greater certainty of being physically able to have children. Older mothers tell researchers that they benefited by waiting to have children because they needed a period of time for personal development, not just career development, for themselves and their partners. Child spacing. When parents begin having children later, their options for child spacing may be limited because their desired number of children needs to be born before the proverbial biological clock runs out. How have the trends in parenthood changed? The 1980s ushered in the growing phenomenon of delayed parenthood in the United States and Canada. Most researchers attribute the phenomenon to the changing roles of women, higher educational attainment, growth in women's employment opportunities, and increased participation in the labor force. In comparison to the past, couples are becoming much more selective in timing their pregnancy. For example, with the increase in birth control and other means of postponing the arrival of said child, women are able to control when and if they want to have a baby. Until a few decades ago, the vast majority of U.S. mothers had their first child in their early 20s. Today, because Americans are postponing having children, we consider childbearing in one's early 20s as early. Later age at marriage and many women's desires to complete their education and become established in a career are causes of postponed childbearing. The trend of postponed parenting changes the traditional family life cycle. Today, both parents and children live in environments that are inundated with technology and its influence. With aminosities and ultrasound, a pregnancy can be followed by the medical practitioners. The medical advances seem to change yearly, and safe births for the late mother are more assured today. The number of one-child families continues a steady increase, making up about 20% of American families. What are some advantages to parenting in the 21st century? Children can bring vitality and a sense of purpose into a household. Having a child also broadens a parent's role in the world. Mothers and fathers become nurturers, advocates, authority figures, counselors, caregivers, and playmates. Due to the rise of technology in the 21st century, things once dreamed about are at our fingertips. It is easier in some ways, as if you have a parenting question, you can simply look it up on the internet. In the case of illness, instead of wondering what's wrong with your child and having to wait to talk to the pediatrician in the morning, you can look up the symptoms and have a peace of mind if the symptoms are minor and not life-threatening through the night. What are some challenges to parenting in the 21st century? In our society, the parenting role conflicts with the working role, and employers typically place work demands first. Today's parents raise their children in a society characterized by conflicting values and points of view. Not only parents, but also schools, peers, television, movies, music, and the internet influence children. You may know parents who have responded to the situation by homeschooling their children. Although lots of parenting advice is useful, the emphasis on how much parents influence their children's health, weight, eating habits, intellectual abilities, behaviors, and self-esteem can be overwhelming. Today's parents are often sandwiched between caring simultaneously for children and elderly parents. Although caregiving can increase life satisfaction, stress builds as family members juggle employment, housework, childcare, and parent care. Over the past 50 years, parenting has become one lifestyle choice among many, and society-wide support has diminished for the child-raising role, once taken for granted as central. For instance, as a declining proportion of Americans are raising children, some communities show less willingness to support publicly funded child-centered facilities and programs for children. Today, the 21st century parent does not have the luxury of guaranteed responsible childcare. Farkas, Duffett, and Johnson reported that 70% of parents believe that having a full-time parent at home is the best way to provide care for children less than 5 years of age, with nearly half having made arrangements to do so. These findings indicate that parents may regard daycare centers with substantial distrust and often consider them as options of last resort. Today's parents are given full responsibility for successfully raising good children, but their authority is often questioned. The state may intervene in parental decisions about schooling, discipline, and punishment, medical care, children's safety as automobile passengers, and even whether a child can be trusted to walk home from school or play in the nearby park alone. In conclusion to this presentation, I wanted to address what a lot of you may be thinking about parenting and that it may be a very daunting subject to approach. But I want to give you encouragement, especially for myself, because in the future I may want to parent, and I most likely will. There are definitely a lot of benefits to parenting, as we've seen in the research, and there are also a lot of costs as well, whether that's monetary or with time, but I feel like it is, in essence, in its generality, I feel like it's worth it, and I think that if any of you are considering doing that, I would highly advise you to. So this is the conclusion of my presentation, and that was Parenthood and Children. Have a good night.